Did you know that most of the time banks are illegally foreclosing on you? We're going to talk about that. Stay tuned. Most of the time, banks are illegally foreclosing on you. And what do I mean by that? I mean, usually when you miss a payment, they foreclose on you right away. You get a notice that next month. It's a nice notice saying that, hey, you missed a payment. We are going to start the foreclosure process. And why do they do that? It's because you signed in those lender agreements that said that you would make payments as promissory to the note. So you promised to make payments on that note. However, most of the time, the banks don't really have the note. So they start the foreclosure process on lies or promises, and they get it going because the first thing they want to do is scare you. And the reason they want to scare you is because they want to back you away, right? If you don't respond within the first 20 days of it going to the court of clerks, then they are going to streamline foreclose you. And what does streamline mean? It means exactly what it sounds like. They're going to, rather than foreclose in 6-9 months and make it quite the process, they're going to foreclose on you as soon as possible, 3, 4, 5, 6 months. It's really not fair. And the reason the banks want to do that, well, there's a lot of reasons banks want to do that. The number one reason is banks make 7 times the amount on foreclosing on somebody. And why is that? Well, because they're getting money back in their pocket. They're getting the money back, and when banks have an opportunity to spend that liquid money, they can make about 9 times what you would on average. So that's why most banks sell the loans in the first place, is because they don't want to be held with unliquid assets. Yes, they're getting payments from your interest. They're making a ton of money, but they don't want to be held with that because they want liquid money so that they can loan more money out. The more money you have, the more you can loan out. So if you have $100,000, you can loan out 9 times that. You can loan out about $1 million, right? So banks would rather have that ability to keep loaning and loaning and loaning. And how do they do that? Well, they sell your mortgage. Okay, if you've ever bought a house that first or second or third month, a lot of times you'll get a notice in the mail saying, hey, your mortgage was sold. It was sold to this outfit, a secondary mortgage outfit. Your primary mortgage outfit is going to take that money they made off of the secondary market and get more loans. They're going to keep searching for more loans. What does that mean? That person that you sold your mortgage to, or whoever they sold it to, or whatever, gets the note passed along. And the note is the only thing that the bank has that allows them to foreclose on you. But if they keep selling it, do they really have the note? Aha! Thank you. That is a fantastic question. Most of the time they do not. So what do they do in the courts? Well, their attorneys are pretty savvy. What they do is they have like 60 to 90 days to get it, discovery process, submit it. They'll put in the signatures that you did on the loan documents and everything. So it looks like they have possession and they have the ability to foreclose on you. But do they? That's where things get a little fishy. They do not, because they don't have the note. And so they illegally foreclose on people without the note. Yes, this is really happening. And I'm going to show you something right here. Do a little screen capture. This is a PDF. And this PDF in this portion is explaining consumer defense programs and whatnot. But what is this? The Foreclosure Defense Handbook. This was written by a gentleman named Vince Kahn. And Vince Kahn went through a foreclosure, and what he found out was mind-blowing about how this works, because most of the notes get transferred into basically stocks, because a lot of the businesses that buy up these homes are buying interest in this. But a note can't be a note and stocks at the same time. That's illegal. Actually, the federal government says that's illegal, and he points this out in this book. So this is securitization. Securitization, and I wasn't able to say that for like the first 15 times I said it, just wouldn't even come out. But it's securing the note. Securitization, right? And it talks about the background in 1933. The Glass-Steagall Act was enacted to regulate the FDIC and banking. It governed the protection and depositors' money, so the banks were not allowed to gamble with the money in their safekeeping, right? That makes sense, because that is literally what happens sometimes. Is you can't take somebody else's money and gamble with it and hope that you're going to get returns and say that, hey, we held on to that money for you. That's not how it works. It's illegal. Banks still do it to some regard, but that is illegal. But in 1999, the Glass-Steagall Act was repealed for a better act, and we'll see another bill was introduced known as the Graham-Leach-Bliley Act. This effectively allowed banks to package and securitize their loans onto Wall Street. That's what I'm talking about. The notes are now becoming stocks. This means that suddenly the trillions of dollars from Wall Street could be used to fund loans. That's a good thing. In the book, it's a good thing. It means it's more money to loan with, right? More people can get loans. More people can buy houses. This means that retirement funds, hedge funds, and all sorts of institutional investors had a safe place to park their money. Their safe places would come to be known as mortgage-backed securities. This is also a good thing. We want mortgage-backed securities. You want those securities to be secure and actually backed by something. And those institutions demanded banks make these mortgage-backed securities packed available to them. These institutions rely on the following: the bank's banking license, the bank's underwriting process, the bank's collections infrastructure. All things that are good, right? It even says these are good things. Here's where things get a little interesting, because it's something that Bush did, but things start to break down when banks realize that since they are not required to be left holding the bag at the end of the day, they could simply underwrite any old loans from any idiot who can sign their name to papers. Banks decided to change their underwriting guidelines around the 2001-2002, and we know what happened when they changed those guidelines. We had a huge bubble and a crash in 2007-2008. That means any McDonald's burger flipper could go down to the bank and get a loan for $1 million with no money down. And no offense to those working in the fast food industry, same as the book says, but that shouldn't be a practice that we get used to and that we should promote, because overspending is a huge issue in the United States as it is anyways. This gets really bad in a housing bubble where the price of housing is way beyond the affordability index of most household medium incomes. So the incomes aren't as much as the prices. And what happens is when everybody gets loans and everybody can get loans and everybody's buying houses, is supply and demand kicks in. And then we got demand. But where's the supply coming? So there's lack of supply. So the prices of housing goes up. It's almost like they did it on purpose to escalate the price of housing. So incentives and motivations. This is where it gets crazy. And I'm sorry if you made it this far. Good for you. You will learn a lot. When a bank lends you money, they traditionally get 2.5 times the face value of the loan over 30 years. That makes sense. And interest, right? If anybody's seen that amortized paperwork, it lists out 360 months, 30 years of payment schedules, and by the end it shows that you are paying about 2.5 times as much as the house is worth. On a $250,000 house, you're probably going to pay $650,000 or whatever, somewhere around there. In the long haul, because most of it's interest and it's a top-end loan, meaning you're paying most of the interest up front, you'd pay most of the principal down towards the end of the rear. Standard 2.5 times. That's fantastic. Banks must be so happy to make 2.5 times. Yeah, it is digitally created through the Federal Reserve System. So these loans are not actual money from the bank. They just have a good deal with the Federal Reserve System, because it's not bad considering that they do not use a single red cent of their own money. It's all Federal Reserve money based on how much money they had selling loans off, right? How much money they had and then have more 9 times to loan out. For example, if you borrowed $100,000 over 30 years, you have paid around $350,000 to the bank. Look at the Truth in Lending disclosure statement from your loan documents. Yes, Truth in Lending. That's where they amortize everything out and they let you know how much you're getting screwed. Because of the Graham-Leach-Bliley Act, banks are now able to sell mortgage-backed securities. Some bright people at Goldman Sachs and others in the financial industry came to the conclusion that they could make even more money if they could sell loans on Wall Street. So they did. Of course they did. And then when you have special interest talking to government entities to get this stuff passed, this is what happens. So This is just the start of it. This is just the start of this book. Instead of making 2.5 times over 30 years from money they did not put up, banks decided they could make up to 1.5 times the face value of the loan immediately. Rather than wait 30 years for 2.5 times a loan, they can make 1.5 times the loan by selling it, by getting rid of it. So immediately, just package these loans and sell them on Wall Street. As the market grew, they not only made money from the sale, but also from the appreciation of the stock. They're allowed to hold up to 10% of the security to qualify as a sale under financial accounting standards. So these big businesses are buying up more and more. They're accumulating more and more, and they can make even money off of it, and they can gamble your money. They can legally gamble your money on Wall Street. And it's what you're paying into. It's not your money, but it's what is being paid into. It's basically government money at that point because they get to print whatever they want. The game of greed, and this is the kicker of it, and I'm not going to go on too much past this. My book is in the descriptions, and you need to read it. This isn't my book. This is Vince Cahn's. But the game of greed under the fractional reserve system, a bank can lend up to 9 times the face value of their depositors' money or cash reserves. Instead of receiving 2.5 times over 30 years for a loan, banks suddenly realized that they could make even more money if they sold the loan and received the cash now. So this is important. Fractional reserve banking explained. Under the guidelines of the Federal Reserve, a bank can lend up to 9 times the amount of their depositors' money. In other words, if you deposit $1 into your bank, then they can lend up to $9 out. Currently in the U.S., the reserve ratio is 10-1 or 10%. That is what fractional reserve banking is. And I know you've heard of fractional reserve banking, but not many people know what it is. It's where the banks only need to hold on to 10% of that money, and they can have 9 times through the Federal Reserve to spend and basically build the economy, allow more money out into the economy. So from that $100,000 loan, they receive $150,000 cash. This is treated as a deposit, which means they can now lend out $1.35 million. This is really good for the bank. This is really good for borrowers, as there is a sudden glut of unlimited money to borrow from. This is really bad for the economy in the long run. And that explains quite a bit later in the book, but that is an important part. And if you study Basic Economics 101 in high school, you will know that if you have too much money chasing limited goods, it leads to an increase in price, right? Supply and demand, increase in price. Well, this is exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened. What else happened is they learned that they could, once a loan is closed, it quickly gets put into a pooling and servicing agreement. This is then registered on the SEC and REMIC trust. The REMIC stands for Real Estate Mortgage Investing Conduit. It is known as Special Purpose Vehicle for the purpose of tax exemption purposes. They're turning notes into stocks. And this is really interesting because imagine, if you will, that your loan is a carrot. Okay, everybody can picture a carrot. Your loan. Okay, your loan is a carrot. It gets thrown in with thousands of other carrots. So there's a bunch of loans all together. There's thousands of people. We're all throwing the loans in to this one little area. We'll find out where, into a giant juicing machine called a REMIC. So they all throw it into a REMIC. Okay, all these loans are getting thrown into a REMIC, which we learned up here was a real estate mortgage investment conduit. Okay, it's fancy words. It's a vehicle to move a note to a stock. They can put it into a REMIC. Okay, so all these loans are being thrown into this REMIC, same as all these carrots are being thrown into this juicer. Okay, at the end of the process, you get gallons and gallons of carrot juice. This juice is then sold to hundreds of people. So now you got all those carrots, all those loans thrown in the REMIC. It makes a bunch of juice, right? So those loans get sold out as stocks to all those people. It can get sold out to thousands of people. The carrot juice gets sent out to thousands of people, sold to thousands of people. This is what happens to your loan when it gets securitized. Your loan is now owned by thousands of shareholders all over the world. What does that mean? This is really important. Please spend a moment to understand this. Reread this section several times if you need to. Your loan is no more. The loan doesn't exist. They sold it. It is now forever a stock. It is now and forever a stock. It is not a note anymore. It is not a loan. It is not. In other words, you cannot make carrots from carrot juice. You can't take the carrot juice and make it back into a carrot. You can't take the stocks and make it back into a loan. It's not how it works. So these banks, to make more money, sold your note. They got rid of your note, and they're foreclosing on you for nothing. And this is super important. This is the gist of it, and I'm going to leave this video pretty much after this. But a loan is what's called a negotiable instrument. There are specific laws governing negotiable instruments called the Uniform Commercial Code. Specifically, the right for a bank to enforce and foreclose on a property is subject to the claimant being a real property of interest. It has to be a real property of interest. It can't be a note and a stock at the same time. If the loan has been sold, then the bank can no longer claim that they are a real party of interest. They sold it, right? Not only that, once a loan has been converted into a stock, it is no longer a loan. If both the loan and stock exist at the same time, this is known as double dipping. Double dipping is a form of security fraud, and that's what they're doing nonstop. When you look at all these court cases, which are all available on the docket in your county, you can most counties have them available online now. You can look at everybody foreclosing. Otherwise, you can go down to the courthouse, have them print them out, and show it to you. It's there. Like, these banks are foreclosing on people without the notes present, and they don't even supply the note on there unless you request it. So all these people are getting streamlined without requesting the note to be showed to prove that they didn't sell it. Last little bit, a negotiation instrument can only be in one of two states when it undergoes securitization, not both at the same time. It can either be a loan and treated and governed as such, or a stock and treated and governed as such. Once it is traded as a stock, it is forever a stock. It is treated as a stock and regulated by the SEC as a stock. On your deed of trust or mortgage, it has language that says something like the deed of trust secures a promissory note, and it can't be a promissory note if they sold it off. Okay, if a trust was created to secure a promissory note and that promissory note is destroyed, then the trust is invalid. It's invalid. It says it right there. So how are all these people foreclosing on other people? You know they sold off all these notes. This is the kicker and the scam of it all. And then how do you get by it? How do you get by it? Okay, you need to give me a call. You need to give me a call and let me point you in the right direction of what the heck's going on. But you need to fight, and you need to fight early. There's a period, a window, and they say on average a foreclosure lasts 9 months. The first 3 months, people are willing to fight. They just don't know much. They think they're optimistic. They can get over it. They're okay. The fight's open. Then they go into the pit of despair the next 5-6 months, usually 5 months or so. And this is before the auction date set, but you finally, right at the end, get the final judgment, and you're like, wow, they're serious about this. And you didn't do anything in between because you were so discouraged. You didn't know what to do, and you did not jump on the opportunities. Then the last 6 weeks happens right before the auction, and people call us nonstop. They call us nonstop, and we wish we could help them. We don't have enough time. We don't have enough time to help people, and they didn't understand the process enough to be able to help themselves. All this to say, we help people. We help people with foreclosure. You need to know what's going on in the foreclosure industry and what's happening around us. This will happen again as we see the income isn't increasing, but the supply is still going down in houses. We still have a shortage in supply of houses, so the housing prices have still stayed the same. People are still able and willing to buy at that price, but some people aren't able to live at that price. And this is what's going on in the world right now. Today, December 6th, 2023, I challenge you, get a hold of me as soon as possible. Let's just point you in the right direction. Give me a call, text, point you in the right direction. Let's figure out what we need to do so that we're not getting scammed by these banks. I don't want to get scammed. I don't want you to get scammed. I will help you. I am a realtor. I do sell houses. That's how I make my living. It's how I put food on the table for my kids. But more importantly, I help people out, and we stop foreclosures. We are Foreclosure Defense. Get a hold of us.